Good morning. Pura Vida. Welcome to this week's Dharma Talk here at beautiful Bali Rica, beautiful Costa Rica, on a day when the rain has held off, but it's rainy season, so we're enjoying that. And today we're going to begin with a meditation, and it will be led by Lisa Virtue. Here we go.
Today I'm going to show you how to do, it's a pranayama practice, which is a breathing practice, and it's a cooling breath. So when it's always hot here, it's very helpful. And I don't remember the name specifically, I just do it and I don't remember what it's called, but you curl your tongue, so it bends, so if you can curl it all the way back, do that. Otherwise, if you can't curl it, just touch it to the top of your mouth. But you curl your tongue back, and you start with your chin down, and as you breathe in, you bring your chin up. And you're breathing so it goes in through the sides of your tongue, and that cools the air as it goes in. So this is what it looks like. So it's a bit slurpy sounding. That's all right. And then on the exhale, you'll start, the first time you'll block your right nostril and exhale as you tuck your chin down, and then you breathe in, and then you do the left nostril.
Through your mouth or nose?
So you breathe in through your mouth.
Oh, okay.
And then you breathe out through your one nostril.
Oh, through one nostril.
Yeah, so you block one side, and then next time you block the other side.
Both
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Okay.
So, and we just, let it be long, slow breaths. It doesn't have to be a rushed breath. And personally, I like to, on the exhale, really exhale everything. Like I kind of bring my belly button in so that it all goes out. So that when I inhale, it's like the lungs just inhale on their own. They just go, and they breathe it in. You don't have to, but I enjoy that. So let's give it a try. Okay. All right, so tucking your tongue and bringing your chin down. Inhale. Block the right nostril and exhale as you tuck your chin. Curl your tongue and inhale. Block your left nostril, exhale, lowering your chin. Tuck the tongue and inhale. Right nostril blocked. Curl your tongue and inhale. Left. Now just continue at your own pace. The more you slow things down, the calmer you'll become. And after the next one, then you can just sit in quiet meditation. Slowly opening your eyes. And bringing your hands to your heart in prayer position. We just bow to each other and namaste.
Namaste. Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
Everybody cool? Here comes Jeff. Is Linda here today?
Drummond? No.
No. Linda from last week?
No.
Oh, that's too bad. Linda last week gave voice to the kind of frustration that we all feel at one time or another, and sometimes all the time, with dealing with coping, with understanding when we come to the Dharma. A lot of it can be confusing. And so I was thinking this would be a perfect day for her because everybody else probably is going to be confused before we are through with this talk. Today we are jumping into what you might call the deep end of the Buddhist enlightenment pool with the topic of wisdom. We're going to look at wisdom from the viewpoint of the Paramitas. This is our sixth Paramita of 6. And this is the Mahayana tradition. And the talk on wisdom cannot be discussed or talked at all without going into the unique Buddhist contribution to the path of enlightenment, which are the topics of emptiness and non-self. These are the two most misunderstood words in all of the Buddhist teachings. So today we're going to take a look at it. Now, wisdom is a huge topic. It's so all-encompassing that it brings to mind, you know, that old saw about how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You're going to have to take the teachings on wisdom one bite at a time. Because the first thing you learn about wisdom is that it's very hard to define. The Tao Te Ching, which is known as probably the wisest book ever written, begins with the Tao, which is the way, that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. Wisdom is one of those things. Consciousness is one. Wisdom is another. Truth is another. Words for which definitions can go on endlessly because we don't have a specific vocabulary for them. In consciousness, for example, we don't even know what consciousness is. But we all know what it is, but we can't actually give you a precise definition, and we really don't know whether it comes from outside or from inside. Anyway, the Mahayana tradition of wisdom is going to take us into these spots, and so we're going to narrow the field of all possible definitions down to its has something to do with self. Over here somewhere, I put this, was it Socrates who said, know thyself? And I think it was Alexander Pope who said, the proper study of man is man. Mankind is man. And the Buddha said that he was here to know the true nature of self, the true nature of reality, and the true nature of self, which he calls Buddha nature. Again, back to the Tao, there's a little reading here, my dear. Have you got your glasses?
I do.
So we're going to try and get through this together and be a little wiser when we get done. I hope. Here we go. Is that number 33?
Yes.
Okay, this is also from the Tao, which, by the way, is the second most read and most sold book in the world after the Bible. And I highly recommend it for anyone to read. It is much more readable than the Buddhist Sutras. And it's really fun. It's very good. So anyway, this is verse 33.
Knowing others is intelligence. Knowing yourself is true wisdom. Mastering others is strength. Mastering yourself is true power. If you realize that you have enough, you are truly rich. If you stay in the center and embrace death with your whole heart, you will endure forever.
So, non-self, emptiness. The error comes from thinking that empty means that there's nothing there. This is not the meaning of emptiness in Buddhism. Emptiness in Buddhism is the sea of potential from which everything arises and to which everything returns. You know, we've done the Tibetan Book of the Dead many, many times. And that tells us that we are a self that is pure energy, it's positive energy. And all the things that go wrong in our lives are because we have not gotten back to ourself, which is home. Should we read that?
We can.
I got it right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
think.
this is self as defined. Is it on top?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now, all right, now think of yourself. Here you are, you're a material form. You have 3 ways to think about what happens to self when we die. You can take the viewpoint that you have an eternal single self that will go to heaven or to hell for eternity. This is eternalism. You have nihilism, which says you're empty, there's nothing there, you know, nothing matters, you just dead. That's it, that's the end. And then you have the Buddha idea, or the Eastern idea of reincarnation or rebirth. And this, of course, means that you have a nature that has a stored consciousness that moves on over and over and over again. So it's eternal. So this is described you and who you are in your essence, not who you become necessarily, but your essence.
And you want me to read the one from the Tibetan Book of the Dead? Or
Yeah.
this Diamond Sutra at the top as well?
No, this is one
Okay.
Tibetan Book of the Dead.
Remember the clear light, the pure, clear, white light from which everything in the universe comes, to which everything in the universe returns. The original nature of your own mind, the natural state of the universe unmanifest. Let go into the clear light, trust it, merge with it. It is your own true nature. It is home.
In other words, we are creatures of energy. And all that energy is a sea of potential. And from that sea of potential, all the space between us is not empty. It's full of everything. It's where your cell phone works and your microwave works, and everything happens in the emptiness. Technically, we are 99.9%, and so is everything else, emptiness. If you reduce all the space within us, we have 21 grams, which is just a bare speck. So we are caught by the fact that we interpret everything with our senses, what we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, and by our sixth sense, which puts it together, consciousness. So we don't see that the emptiness is really the fullness. It's where everything is coming from, and it's where everything is going. Now, there is a sutra or teaching in Buddhism called the Heart Sutra. And this is the sutra that takes us in Buddhism to cross the gap to science. It is why Einstein is reported to have said, he certainly shows it in his teachings, that the only religion or philosophy that can cope with science as religions and philosophies stand today is Buddhism. And the sentence that really brings that, crosses that gap, I don't have it with me, but I'll paraphrase it. It says, emptiness is matter. Matter is emptiness. That means that we are existing in a sea of potential. Quantum physics have taken this whole thing and they call it the unified field. Do we have any physicists here? Anybody good? I love physics and I study it and I get it. I'm like, Linda made me think of it. I get it and then I don't get it. And I get it and I don't get it. I see it. What we are experiencing is a manifestation of the potential to be a person. We could be a telephone pole or whatever. But we manifested out of the unseen, unsensed self to be who and what we are. Everybody got that one? Was that easy to understand?
Say that louder.
All right, you have space. And the Buddha says, this is a space, it's your own true nature. It's home. That's where you come from. All the elements that make up you come out from outer space. And when you die, you return to that space. And then you reform, you transform, and you come back again. E equals mc squared. Energy equals matter is how it's put. You're material, but you have arisen and taken material form from space. All the things that are you are out there. Does that make more sense? Yes? No?
Sort of.
You got it?
We're holding on.
It's really a reverse, because we think that what is real is what we can see, touch, smell, etc. with our senses. But it's actually the opposite. Everything that is really real, we can't touch with our senses. Now we have learned through science to be able to tap into this space and bring out of it your telephone call, your microwave, your electricity. All of these things they're all there. You just can't see it. You have to know how to bring them from potential to material. Now, the quantum physicists talk a lot about the fact that we went off the rails with Newtonian physics, and then with Darwinian theories, because they are both based on materialism. They are both taken from what you can see with your naked eye, with your touch, with what have you. And they have naturally progressed to be aggressive and not very altruistic. Dog eat dog, Darwinianism, survival of the fittest, and Newtonian physics, the use of things, exploitation. This tells you to go just the opposite. It's backwards. Am I still getting across?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
So now we're kind of paying the price of not knowing. One of the things that totally amazed the physicists, the quantum physicists, of course, was that particles are interchangeable with waves. Particles are material. Waves are not material. I don't know what you call them, but they're not material. However, all the things they do show that this is the double-blind thing, which we all know about. When a particle reaches a place to go through and it can't get through it, it simply turns itself into energy and goes through. Turns itself into a wave. And then it can regain its material form on the other side and go back to being a particle. I hope that this comes through. Anyhow, we're here. And when we talk about wisdom and we talk about emptiness, the wisdom is that things are not what they seem. And in Buddhism, we bow to the mysteries because we do not understand, because we are limited. I don't have the best description. I've given it a lot of times, but I usually read it because I don't want to mess up Einstein's word, but I can paraphrase it. A human being is a part of the whole that we call the universe. And it is a part that is deceived by the senses, which form a kind of prison for it, restricting it to just what it can see or hear with the senses. The truth is that the only way we can break from the prison of sensory perception is to widen the circle of compassion. That's a big one to think about.
Mm-hmm.
We begin to see with our hearts. Instead of seeing with your eyes and your touch and the rest of it, you begin to see from inside. An interesting kind of little bit of an example of that is we ask the question, what color is an apple? And people generally would say red or maybe yellow or green. Then one kid says up and he says, white. And the teacher says, it's not white. It's red or yellow or green or multicolored, but it's not white. And he says, I'll show you. Then he cuts it open. It's white. He was perceiving it from the inside rather than observing the external. And so you begin to practice trying to see things from a different perspective, a different perception. There's so many ways to go with this that it's hard to choose one. But that story reminds me of another one, which is, we all know the story of the great king who sent all his wise men out and said, don't come back until you bring me a statement that will always be true, that is indisputable, it will hold up under the most intense investigation, it will always be true no matter where, when, how, who presents it. And they took off and they were gone for a long time. And they came back and they said, Sire, we have a statement of truth that will be good anytime, anywhere, with anyone. It's indisputable. And we all know what that is, don't we?
No, I've never heard this.
This too shall pass. This too shall pass. And that was a wise statement from wise men, but it took them a while to get around to figuring it out. Now, the Buddha talks about natural laws, and one of them is the law of change, that everything changes all the time. Nothing is substantial and solid. Now, this is a truth. It's true. And the truth is, what do we call it?
Impermanence.
Impermanence. Couldn't think of the word for a moment. That's how I'm getting old. Anyway, it's impermanence. Now, if we really know and understand that everything is impermanent, everything has an expiration date, nothing lasts forever. I think it's T.S. Eliot who talks about the fact that the executive boarding the commuter train with a newspaper under his arm and travels to the office and reads his newspaper. And when he reaches his station, folds up his newspaper, puts it under his arm, and leaves the train, and he is not the same person who entered the train. We are changing all the time. The train is changing. The landscape is changing. We are changing. We're shedding cells. We're thinking different thoughts. We know different things. We have different ambitions. We are changing. So if you want to reach enlightenment and you want to be liberated from suffering and to be happy, what's one of the main causes of suffering? It's clinging. It's holding on to things that are going to change by their very nature. And if we cling to something, trying to make what is impermanent permanent, we're going to suffer, aren't we? I mean, you can't avoid that. You want to add something to that? You're good with that.
No, it's just that we suffer when we believe things are permanent.
Yeah.
It's mine.
It's mine. We don't appreciate. We may not have a gratitude.
It's mine, and I'm going to keep it.
Yeah.
Not only it's mine, but I'm going to keep it.
Yeah.
The only obvious illustration is those of you who live here. Like, look how beautiful the grounds are that you guys keep here.
Mm-hmm.
Just leave it alone for a while.
Mm-hmm.
It will
Yeah.
return to the jungle.
Instantly.
Pretty quickly. And so we fight to maintain things, and you know, I know what I think the perfect yard is,
Yeah.
and the perfect lawn is, and those things. And so I'm always fighting to keep that. And in all reality, there's a bit of suffering and work that comes along with that.
Yeah.
So not all of this is bad, but it is that it will all change. If I do nothing, it will all change.
It will, and it is whether you do anything or not. That's why you have to keep at it all the time.
I guess.
The great flaw of the philosophy of conservatism is not recognizing that you cannot maintain a status quo. Conservatives want to maintain a status quo. They don't want things to change, unless it's a change for the better. But they want that status quo, and they have a lot of nostalgia for the way things were. And this is just a flaw. It's a fly in their ointment. You know, everybody has a few. But now, getting back to Buddhism and getting back to Mahayana. The Buddha says, what is self? Okay, we know that wisdom has something to do with self. What, we may not be quite sure. And the Buddha says, well, let's take a look at what is self. Oh man, did he study self. He came up with, I think, 51 or 84 different emotions and one thing and another, but he narrowed it all down to what are called the 5 aggregates, which is very unromantic. 5 aggregates. An aggregate is a heap of something. It's just a bunch of something. And he said, okay, we are made up, ourselves are made up of 5 aggregates. Let's see if I can remember them. The first is easy, it's form. Form. It's our physical form. Okay. The second is, they call it feelings, but what is meant is sensory feelings. The ability to do the 5 senses plus the 6th. Form, feeling, perception. Here is where the apple comes in. Here's where we get a lot of individuality. Okay. Perception. Mind formations. These are your thoughts and your emotions, which lead to your actions. Form, feelings, perceptions, mind formations, and consciousness. We cannot really define consciousness. Like wisdom, it is a mystery to which we bow. We know we have it. There was an old senator years ago that they were having all these congressional meetings on morality, particularly in the movie industry and television, which had just gotten started. And so they had all these thou shalt nots, you know. You couldn't have a married couple in the same bed or even in the same bedroom. You could have one standing in the dressing room and one in the twin bed, etc. They just were into it all the way. And they were talking to this one senator, and he said, well, I can't define pornography, but I know it when I see it. And this is the way we are about consciousness. We know we're conscious, but just try and really analyze it, and you run into some serious problems. And we know what wisdom is, but we could say, for example, it's intelligence. Okay, that's a part of it. But what about Forrest Gump and his last statement? I may not be a wise man, but I know. I may not be a smart man, but I do know love. So it's not always intelligence. You don't have to have a high IQ. So almost anything you can say about wisdom, you can say, well, it's not quite that. And this takes us back to the initial sentence. The Tao that can be told is not the true Tao. We finally go beyond words. And this is what we call transcendence. In Buddhism, it's called going beyond. In the West, we think of transcendence as going above and beyond, over the top. Buddhism just says going beyond. And the word paramita, we'll go back to that, means two ways of going. One Jeff mentioned last week, which is the word paramita can mean crossing over. This refers to discussing Buddhism and the path to enlightenment as crossing a river. You go from one shore to the other shore. That's a paramita. The word para alone means going beyond. So this is a transcendent teaching. It's a teaching to reach enlightenment. It begins with transformation. We study and we see the teachings and we say, oh, everything is impermanent. How does that affect me? How does that change the way I cope with my life? How does it really change that I know this unless I act on it? What changes will I have to make if I understand that everything is impermanent? So this is where we put into practice the teachings. The teachings don't do us any good unless we put them into practice. So as we go through each and every one of them, you have to think about, how will I handle this for myself? Now, not everybody handles it the same way. Some people are going to say, no, I want things to stay just the way they are. And if they don't, I'm going to do nothing but sit around and tell you how it was when I was a kid and I had to walk 5 miles to school in the snow. You know?
Always uphill.
Always uphill. That's right. But you change with the times. You change with your understandings of life and what you're up against. So that's one. That's, where are we there? That's one of them.
Do you want to stop and ask questions?
Yeah, that do, because I've got so many other approaches here that it's very hard to pick one out. I'm kind of just reaching out and grabbing different things.
Comments, questions?
How do you spell Tao? D-O-W?
T-A-O.
T-A-O.
But with a D.
No,
T.
I know,
You
but
say it
it's
with a D.
pronounced Tao.
It's pronounced with
Kind
a
of
D.
a soft T. Yeah.
D-A-O.
Tao.
Thank you.
Good question.
I think Mac is reading it right now.
Okay.
I'm
Diane.
not sure if I can put together my thoughts, but
Okay, try. I'm having trouble too, honey.
I was listening to a professor explain the no self,
No self.
and I almost got it for a millisecond. And the
We'll do
closest
that.
I can come to explaining the pathway to understanding it is, I kind of relabel it as universal self or core self. It's
That
like,
was the next thing we're coming
when I
to.
say
Yeah.
namaste to you, that has nothing to do with my body form. It doesn't matter if I'm missing an arm or a leg or anything else.
Okay.
And when I say namaste to you, it does not matter. It's detached from my thinking and my emotions And you had 5 domains there. But anyway, you take away all of that, what do you have left? You have kind of a universal space that we all share.
Okay, this was the next part of the 2 parts here.
Mhm.
The first was emptiness. The second is no self or non-self. Very simply, non-self in Buddhism means that you have no fixed self because you're changing all the time. We've already covered that fact that we are permanently in flux, so that you do not have, even with rebirth, you do not maintain necessarily this life, but you carry forward into it. That's karma. That's another subject. But no self simply means that you have a self that is conditioned. I'm going to jump back here. The next thing you need to know is that in Buddhism, when you study any of it, you have to understand the difference between dualism and non-dualism. Dualism is the conditioned world that we live in, where everything has opposites. But we talk in all of the religions are non-dual. They are single, not 2, 3, 4, 5. Got that? So that we have relative and absolute. I may not even like you in a dual world, but I love everyone. So that includes you. That's unconditional love. It does not require anything from you. Or I can have a conditioned love which says, I love you, but only if you eat your peas, Jimmy. You know? So that's the difference between dual and non-dual. Between relative and absolute. The Buddha talks at length about relativity, another reason the scientists look. That things are as they are depending on where you are viewing them. Things look different to different people from different angles. That gets into perception. But basically all that a non-dual world says is that everything is one. When the statement that Einstein made, a human being is a part, that's dual, of a whole, that's non-dual. And we are both. So what you are dealing with on a day-to-day basis of all these teachings is how do we apply them in a dualistic world. We have to consider so many things. In a non-dual world, which is a religion, let's say, take Christianity, take any of them, it always comes to one. There's one God and one religion. There's one Buddha nature. There is one universe. The word means one. So we are constantly trying to balance between dual and non-dual. When it comes to yourself, you say, wait a minute, don't tell me I have no self. Here I am. Well, you're absolutely right. Freud came up with the notion of ego. He used that as the catchword for talking about self. And in Buddhism, you could put it in his terms that you spend all of your lifetime developing a healthy self. A healthy self. A sick self cannot get to enlightenment. It goes on the negative side of energy. Now we're back to energy. Positive energy, negative energy. Good energy, bad energy. creative energy, destructive energy. And we are energy beings. And we're having to constantly fit what we do into whatever energy flow we have. If our energy is to hurt somebody, it takes a different form than the person who wants to help somebody. That's pretty simple. You can identify who you want to be in life by positive or negative. Do you want all of it for yourself and you don't care about the other person? This is taking you away from what Einstein said was that we need to widen our borders of compassion. We expand, or do you want to contract? It has to do with energy. So getting back to self. You have a self, and you direct yourself. You have complete control over yourself in some ways. You can't control your circumstances, but you can control two things, your mind and your heart. So these you can control. And that is where you get to know self, is when your ego gets out of the way. And basically you outgrow yourself, your egoic self. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember does it make sense?
Yep.
Do you remember our bowls for
5 bowls?
Yeah, the bowls for the whatever you call them, the diffidency things, the bad things.
Mm-hmm.
Things getting in the way of.
Yeah, well, there's
clarity.
a name. There's a name for them. The
Yeah.
5. What the hell is it?
Defilements.
Defilements. Thank you. Okay, so you have them. Okay, you got
Twice.
Pulled
Yeah,
right
so-
out of the web.
So there you go. There you go. I really forget words a lot now, and thoughts too. But Diane, when you get to know self, it means you don't have a fixed self. You have a self that is continuously going up and growing or sliding down in decay.
So Ruthie, are you saying N-O self? Or are you saying
N-O.
K-N-O-W?
No self
No.
or non-self.
Okay.
So
Which is not saying that you don't have a self. You have a self. And your job in a dualistic world is to have the most enlightened self you can possibly have, the most positive self, the most compassionate self that you can have. But then, if you take those bowls, let's say of anger, and you take the bowl and you throw it away, it's not there anymore. So as you conquer, so to speak, the defilements, let's say if you're angry, you now have gone into the realm of it's not you anymore. You're not an angry person anymore. So ultimately, when you are enlightened, you have no defilements, and you no longer are dealing with the dualistic self. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
So in Freudian terms,
Yes.
You've got the self, then you've got the superego, right?
You got
And
the
then on
id
the other
and
side
the
you've
ego.
got the id, right?
Mhm.
So what, in Freudian terms, what this would mean, you'd have to stop having the effects of the superego and the id.
That's right.
Okay, that's where we're talking about. That's a good analogy. Okay,
There you go.
Mhm.
thank you.
So it's not that you don't have a self. You have a self. But you have a
it's the
self
effects-
in a dualistic
It's
world.
the effects of.
And then
Can I
yes,
give an example?
Please, go.
We each have a first name and a last name.
Mhm.
The first name is ours, just ours.
Mm-hmm.
In a family system, and like in Spanish family systems, you have 2 last names.
Yeah.
So mother and
Confusing.
father is probably more accurate because you're part of 2 systems. But that is where you are part of the collection. I am Jeff in a dualistic way.
Mm-hmm. You're an individual.
I am. And I am an Olsen. That is broader. That is expansive. That is, myself, Jeff, can fit in there. But when you just take the raw material of Olsen, I don't know. There's the mystery.
And then you move out from that.
And then there's a bigger Olsen family system, not just my immediate family, but the other one. And then you broaden that further, and there's all the Norwegians, which is the people we came from, and then there's all of the world. And we continue to expand, and it's in that we really actually, that I think you find your true no self. It's now you
are one.
You've arrived. You're enlightened when you come to that big part.
Right. Okay.
Your no self is no longer a prisoner of the suffering
of the whole Olsen
separation,
family and the Norwegians and all that. Okay.
Yeah,
it's expansive.
Constantly.
It's expensive.
But
it's big.
But the main cause of suffering is the delusion that we are separate. When now you get to the teaching that we are all inter-beings. We are all part of the human race. You cannot really, if you feel separated and then you feel lonely or isolated, that's a major suffering. And it comes from the delusion that you are a separate self. That the individual is somehow not a member of the whole.
I have an example.
You got that?
I have an example.
Yes.
Of something. When we lived in the Virgin Islands, and this Hurricane Hugo came, and it just wiped out the island. And the phrase that kept coming up, "We're all in this together."
We're all in this
together. And it in the mansions up on the hillside to the barrios, all the same. We didn't have electricity. The water was this. The blah blah blah. All so there was something about it that was horrible, but something about it that was wonderful because we all shared and there was no division. We were all one, so we were all in it together.
Yeah.
A hard way to learn that lesson, but case in point.
Yeah,
exactly.
but that was the diamond in the rough.
Yeah.
There are people I know that lived in New York City during 9/11.
Yeah.
They said the exact same thing.
Absolutely.
It was amazing. I mean, people were going out and hugging each other, saying hello. Nobody was blowing their horn.
Yeah.
When cars drove. It didn't last, but it
That's
was
the
really
problem.
nice when it went on.
There is something. There's something in the human psyche that can hear, analyze, process these teachings, and then just totally ignore.
But when you
And then they suffer.
When you experience it, though, you know you're home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
once you have to have
your
the
stories.
experience.
Now you know you found home, and it's way bigger than you.
Yep.
And it's mysterious, and some of it undefinable.
But you don't always realize that.
No.
My question is, if wisdom is a worthy goal.
If wisdom is a word to what?
A
Worthy goal.
Yes.
Which we can probably all agree on. How do you know when you have it?
Okay. You.
The thinking mind.
The professor wants a test.
Exactly.
How about this answer? You'll know.
You'll know.
Because you'll be wise
You'll know.
enough.
You'll know.
You'll just
You'll
know.
know.
Exactly.
You know. It's that thing like pornography. You know it when you see it.
Yeah.
You know it when you experience it. You know.
To the analytical mind, not a great answer.
Yeah.
Wait, do you
there
have
are
a
no
different
answers.
answer?
There are no answers. I did want to go back to what the
But isn't
Sharon
that a
brought up.
problem in terms of we are all programmed to be so analytical, some more than others? and that interferes with all that we're talking about.
Well, it
Okay.
can go either way. That's the problem of a dualistic world.
Mm-hmm.
It can be for the better or it can be for the worse.
That's why you
Depends.
cross the bridge to the other shore.
And that's why you cross over to where, you know. But the metta that we do, meditation that we do at the end of every talk, is a matter of expansion outwards. The widening the circle of compassion that Einstein's talking about, that the Buddha was talking about. Breaking away from the prison of isolation, where you're restricted to a smaller and smaller world. You reach out and open outwards. So we go from ourselves to someone we love, to someone we just meet, to someone we're in conflict with, to everyone. It's pushing the boundaries as we go. But no self is, we talk about selflessness. And we talk about being unselfish. And a lot of people think, oh, I got to be a martyr. I got to give away everything. And I need to be a doormat and all this. It has nothing to do with it. It just means that you are a process. All these things in space that turn in, that you manifest from and return to, that create you and then you go away, they are a process. And is Taylor here? No, he's a student of the Veda. And they believe in something called the Atma, which is a permanent self. It never changes from lifetime to lifetime. As with all Eastern traditions, they believe in rebirth. But the Hindus and the Vedic tradition they come from believe in one fixed self. And this fixed self goes from lifetime to lifetime. And his circumstances change according to what he does in this lifetime. The consequences are going to be felt in the next. The Buddha says you have a store consciousness, which is like C, but everything changes, and that has to apply to self and no self. That you are going to transform. You'll be another self, but you'll still be yourself. That's confusing. You're still you, just as you were you when you stopped being a toddler and became a child. You knew you were you, but you couldn't really, pinpoint it when it happened. It's a flow from one thing to another. What are we doing on time? I'm talking too much.
11:09.
Oh,
11:09. So we should end
it's
soon.
late. Well, we need to continue with this,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a big topic, and you need to personalize it. I think next week we should approach this same topic from Jeff's detached involvement. Don't you think it applies?
Awesome.
Awesome. I think
I'll
beyond
to study.
that, I want to get into some of the other teachings of Mahayana, which go along with emptiness and no self or non-self. And I just hope that clears up the confusion. When I mentioned that about nihilism, where you die, you're just not there anymore, that is a misconception of non-self. That says, nothing, and then people get the idea that nothing matters. It's all just emptiness. It's just,
That was Nietzsche, Friedrich Nietzsche.
Mhm.
In a nutshell.
Nietzsche
I think.
thought,
Yeah.
Nietzsche took that viewpoint of, I know when I first started working with Buddhism in my own life, the vocabulary was just awful. right from the very first teaching, the word dukkha was suffering. Well, it really just means anything from a stubbed toe all the way up to the crucifixion. I mean, it's suffering is a word, and then you get into what's the cause of it? Desire. Well, how the heck do you get out of desire? You can't. I mean, we have to desire. So we had every step of the way to get the translations right. And two of the biggest ones that are messed up are non-self and emptiness. And so I should hush. But do you like that idea for next week?
Yes, yeah, of course.
I think it's really important. And then the week following that, I'm going to do a talk on the two main branches of meditation, samatha and vipassana, and where they differ and how they are used. That came from last week.
It did.
Yes, it did. I was very rude, very unwise, very unkind. I said, no, you're wrong. That's not a good way to do things. That's not a Buddhist way to do things, but I did it. So now I'm going to explain why. Okay, now we're going to do metta, right?
Yes, please.
Do we need to have a moment more of somebody who's really got a question? Anybody?
We could. We have 5 minutes or so. Anyone want to make comments, questions about Ruthie's topic today?
Well, just to pop off.
The what?
I thought it was going to be about wisdom, and on a very basic level, I thought, well, what example do we have in front of us every week? You are the wise one to me, is I think to all of us. So
No.
that's what I thought
Yes,
you
yes,
were going
thank
to.
you.
Just say thank you. Finger in the temple. Thank you. Thank you. We're all wise just because we're here, looking for some wisdom along the way to make it
You want to
less
say something?
suffering.
No, you're just itchy.
Just itchy. Okay.
Anybody else comments on this as you thought?
If non-self creates such confusion, why does the term persist?
Because that's the translation from the Sanskrit and the Pali.
But couldn't you
You should.
use
You
the
just
meaning
have,
of it, like flowing
no,
self?
you just
something?
have to keep telling
Yeah.
people over and over again
Okay.
that this means this. And it's like the word paramita has like 10 meanings. And they just sort of reached out and grabbed the ones that look most obvious. And then everybody ever after has to come back and explain it. Keeps you busy.
Job security.
Yeah, that's right, job security.
There's a good example in politics. For instance, the country that we just left, Canada, years and years ago,
Talk up,
became the world's first officially multicultural country. It did for domestic policy reasons, and the concept was that if we are open to the world as an immigrant nation, we are, but it was opening the doors a little wider and saying there is no Canadian identity that cannot be added to and contributed to by all cultures.
It's made you a great country in many ways.
And it's enshrined both constitutionally and in the legal system, various laws that come from that. It was a great concept, right? But it needed a lot of getting your mind around. Well, what about square dancing? We have to lose that, and is it all going to be Ukrainian dancing? And what about this?
Yeah.
And on a superficial level, it's working because various traditions that are brought to Canada, like bubble tea and samosas and all the rest of it, are quickly become mainstream. But in times of crisis, which we're in right now, people retreat to their little camps and they forget all about it. And so, if you're going to make a change like that, you really have to understand what it means, I think. And Canada didn't have that debate. It just was declared by Pierre Trudeau that this is going to happen. Right? And so it takes a lot of work to open yourself up and lose your
your ego, your identity. It's a perfect example of self and no self.
Yeah.
One person and the group. And things fall apart because some people are expanding and some are contracting. And they clash.
But a true thing, sociologically and historically, is that when things move forward quickly, there's always
A backlash.
a backlash, and so 3 steps forward, hopefully 1 step back, and now you're 2 steps in, and you pick it up from there. But that's a true that happens every time. It's happening in the United States right now. It's
Right.
Same thing.
And if you see, you can see people saying, I'm not you. It's me versus you all the time.
Or
they don't get the idea.
You don't belong. Right.
You don't belong.
This may be a question for another time, but
Yeah.
you were speaking about the self and the non-self, and I wonder what the Buddha would say about the higher self, which is
That's the enlightened self.
the enlightened self.
And the only absolute self is what the Buddha calls nirvana, which literally translates as blown out. And it means you have blown out all the defilements, you have blown out all of the impediments, all the obstacles are gone, and you have now cleaned everything off to your first true Buddha nature, which is absolutely pure and undefiled. And now you don't have to maintain anything. Now there is no gift and no giving. You understand? And now all of a sudden, all of this that we talk about is irrelevant because it simply is. And then you have found the ultimate, that's the ultimate enlightenment.
So it's just something that we have in us to attain.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a higher being or a spirit that is looking over us, that
We
is
just keep,
there to guide us.
Not in Buddhist thought.
in Buddhist thought,
It's not out there.
No guardian angels.
well, you might have,
It's a mystery.
it's a mystery. And they just don't think that if you have a ghost, that it's always going to be the same ghost at the same age in the same place. It could be a little kitty ghost, or it could be the same ghost, but in a whole different era. So if the ghost that needs to visit you is old, he comes as an old ghost. If it's a baby, he comes as a baby ghost. In other words, even the spirits are not fixed.
And nirvana today doesn't necessarily mean nirvana tomorrow.
Exactly.
Well,
That's
or
right.
does that mean? I thought once you reach your
Well, that gets into the Bodhisattva. We can do that later. That's the whole point of Mahayana Buddhism. Took us from enlightenment for the individual, which from the individual spread out to benefit everyone, to the Mahayana, which said, wait a minute, let's have an increase in this idea of self and no self. And our self now is here to, once it's enlightened, it's not just for himself. You vow to come back and help other people. So you never get to nirvana because you have committed to getting everybody to enlightenment. You're coming back. It's far more altruistic. And actually those teachings are in early Buddhism, but they didn't. It was enough to try and get people to grasp basic ideas than to get into that idea of the West. Okay, we gotta go. We gotta go. Okay, everybody ready? Stretch a moment. Shake it out. Oh. All right. Take a deep breath. I'm trying to get rid of this stuff in my throat. We're going to start with ourselves. Picture yourself in your own mind. then to yourself say, may I be well. May no harm come to me. May I live with ease, calm and peaceful. May I be happy. And now, move out to someone you love with all your heart. Look at that person, smile, say their name. Say, may you be well. May no harm come to you. May you live with ease, calm, and peaceful. May you be happy. Then we move a little farther out to someone we know, but not all that well, just somebody we're acquainted with, maybe somebody who waits on us, a neighbor we see on the road walking our dogs. If you don't know his or her name, address them as friend. Dear friend, may you be well. May no harm come to you. May you live with ease, calm and peaceful. May you be happy. And now, moving farther out, you come to a person with whom you are in conflict. They don't like you, you don't like them. Could be an old grudge or it could have happened just a few hours ago. But there is conflict. You breathe deeply, you relax, you bring their face to mind, and abandoning all malice, see them as a human being and say, may you be well. May no harm come to you. May you live with ease, calm and peaceful. May you be happy. And then we move farther out by placing our hands over our hearts and going out all the way to all sentient beings. 8 million billion human beings, sentient beings on our planet alone, and however many other universes, other planets there are out there. And to all of these sentient beings, we speak this way. May all beings everywhere on this plane and all other planes be well. May all beings everywhere be safe. May all beings everywhere be free from suffering. May all beings everywhere be happy. This is unconditional friendliness. It is goodwill without regard to return goodwill. And we can sit with it at home for as long as we like. Here we release our hands, open our eyes, smile at our friends, don't have any foes, so we can't smile at them. We just did that theoretically, unconditionally. And now we'll say our form of benediction, which is, she's here somewhere, a new person. I'm going to say a sentence out loud and you repeat it out loud. No, we say it all together. I say it and then you say it. Okay. See, I'm getting Alzheimer's. You guys are going to have to pick me up and put me away. Okay, here we go. Go in peace.
Go in peace.
Go making peace.
Go making peace.
Living gently.
Living gently.
Loving mightily.
Loving mightily.
And bowing to all the mysteries.
And bowing to all the mysteries.
There we go.
Thank you.
Thank
See
you
you
so
next
much.
week.
Great talk, Ruthie.
Well,